Hi, howdy folks, how's it going? It's Descattys out in the shed, and what we're going to do in this video, we're going to follow on now with our next leather project. By the way, I'm actually having a cup of Darjeeling tea, so don't tell Barney because he gets all high and mighty and like when I'm drinking a cup of tea. So anyway, digressing ever so slightly. So in that previous video that we did before, it was showing you how to make a little kind of tinder pouch or a storage pouch with holes punched in the top with a piece of paracord, for example, and then you can obviously contain whatever it is you want in there. At the moment, I've seen Chris W, he posted up a picture on his page, on his community thing on YouTube, showing some bags that he made. But what I'm going to do now, we're going to follow on and we're going to do something a little bit more different. I do apologise as well because I did say I was going to get it out last Wednesday, and on the Wednesday before everything's just got in the way with videos, family life and all things like that. So what I thought then, what we do for the next project is we're going to make a little sort of bag where it involves some sewing, okay, but then also you've got the option to punch the holes in the top and then put your paracord on there or your leather thonging. Now this one, for example, I use it just to hold like a tin if I'm doing if I'm just collecting some pine resin and stuff like that. It literally has got a tin can in there. All right, you can actually see some of the old resin shining in the bottom there. I've got another one as well that's got the other part of the part of the tin that I use for procuring either birch oil or pine oil. And then this particular one here is a bit special really. There you can see there's sewing on the outside of this one. Alright, but we're going to do sort of sewing on the inside, as it were. Alright, now this one's a little bit special because this was my daughter Lauren's, and as you can see it's proper faded, you know, she had a little horse toggle on there with Lauren on it, and she used to have it like still got her spoons in it and all stuff like that, which used to come out with me when she was just a little girl. Yeah, so with that in mind then, let's get on with this project. So for this project then, you obviously need your leather, okay, as you know, we're using upholstery leather at the moment because it's nice and simple. All right, you also need some threads of choice. I mean, this is actually cotton wool, so it's a little bit more what's the word, it's not fluffy as is sort of the traditional wool that you use, that some people use. But what you can do if you're going to use traditional wool, if you get hold of a bag of it, I mean, some people say it's got quite expensive these days. I haven't had to buy it for years, but what you can do is get like a piece of wax and actually run the wax down the string, and it will kind of give it more of a, obviously it will waterproof the thread, and it will make it a little bit more stiffer as well to use. So you've got the option of using something like that. This particular one is this some barber thread, okay. This I purchased a while ago from the Identity store. I think I picked it up at the gathering. This is black linen thread, and there's about 250 metres here. This cost me about £14, this one, but it's good thread. It's one that I tend to use quite a lot. This one I use absolutely tons. This is kind of like my favourite. This is Somac threads from a company here in the UK, again from the Identity store. There's the actual information on there if you want to have a look. I'll put some of this stuff in the description for you. I've got some other little thread here. I've got this one. This is another thread I picked up cheap. And then the final one I've got that you could potentially use. Now this is just like a fake leather thonging. So if you wanted to use something like this for threading your pouches, you can use this. It's quite good stuff actually. It's very strong, and all the rest of it. But you know, obviously, I mean, you know, use your Google food skills. You can go on eBay and Amazon and all the relevant companies. If you're here in the UK, you can obviously use Tandy Leathers. There's another company called Leprevo. Obviously you're going to need some needles. Now with needles, the thing is, because of the gauge of the thread, because the thread is quite thick, you're going to need sort of needles that are going to accommodate thicker threads, yeah, so something like that, for example. All right, because you want to be able to obviously you want to be able to thread that. All right, so what I'll probably do is use this needle here. They sometimes come with a point, and sometimes they come with just like a stunted end. It's almost like a blunt end. But with that in mind, what you would need to use then is like an awl, or even go back to using sort of like the tiny hole on a hole punch if you want. That's quite a fast one to use. That one there would work, and then you can punch it out that way. This is a threading awl. So basically, you attach your your chosen choice of thread on there, and then again there's, oh, let me show you that. There's the little eyelet that goes through there, and then there's a technique to actually use one of them, to use one of these. But I actually don't like using it that much, I must admit. I don't really sort of bother with it too much, only if I want to do something really quick. But I haven't used that for ages. Then if you haven't got a hole punch, now this is just like a little awl. This one I keep in my possibles pouch. There's a little bit of hazel there. I've got an old Sharpie pen off of a lid off a Sharpie pen, and there's my sort of this is just a sail needle. And literally what I've done is I've glued it into the end of the hazel there, sort of tapped it all the way down, and then that works quite nice as a little awl. And then you need, obviously, on top of that, just to finish off your rotary cutter. Or if you don't want to buy a rotary cutter, I mean, I like using a rotary cutter just because it keeps the cut a little bit more nice, I suppose, or neat. But you can use a pair of scissors as well, but you're sure that they're nice and sharp. So that's sort of the tools that you need. Then obviously the final thing you might need then is obviously a bit of paracord, leather thonging, or whatever it is you're going to use to put around the around the top of your pouch. Now with this particular one, what I've done is I've literally just made the hole slightly bigger at the top to accommodate 2 lengths of paracord, and what I'll do with this one, I just run them through the opposite sides, and this just works like a draw cord one. So that's quite a tidy sort of option if you want to go for that one. All right, so let's get started. So for thread then, what I'm going to use that, all right, for this particular project, and then obviously I'm going to use the needle with a slightly wider eye just to accommodate the gauge of the thread. Then what I do over time, when you start getting a few bits and pieces, it's quite handy just to get yourself a little sort of container of sorts. It doesn't really matter what you use. This is just an old something that I had from an old job, and literally I just put all my needles in there, keep them all tidy, and I know where they are. So this is the pouch that had the tin in it. You can see some sort of resin that has collected on the inside of the on the inside there. So what I've done is I've turned it inside out. Now for this project, threads, you know, sort of threading techniques and stuff like that, if I'm doing something a little bit special, then you can use a saddle stitch. Saddle stitch is kind of almost like the use of 2 needles. Go and use your Google Full skills on this one. I'm not going to show you in this particular video. And then also, if you're going to do something like a saddle stitch, it's also quite good to either, you can buy them, and it literally is they're sort of clamps that almost go into that sort of shape on the end. And what you do is it frees up your hands, and then what you do then, you can obviously then stitch down the length of your desired length of leather. But what I did make, and I haven't got it anymore, when I was making it, I used to make leather sheaths for little open all knives. If I quickly find one, I think Lauren's one's still in there actually, and we used to make these for and sell them at the wilderness gathering. So we come up with this design, me and Lauren. You know, nothing, you know, it was just something that we did, and Lauren, this is one that Lauren actually made. So then when I carried on making them, because you're using a thicker gauge of leather, and I also was attaching a little ferro rod holder to it, you know, you obviously want your hands free. So the idea was, what I did was I actually made, I literally got two sort of sheets of, it was off an old pallet, believe it or not. And then what I'd done was I literally just parcel taped it near the bottom, then loosely parcel taped it at the top. And then what I used to do is I literally used to clamp it between my thighs so it would push onto the leather, and then I would work with it that way. All right, but this is a little. This might be a future project that I'll show in you know, when we get on a bit more with the leather making. This was, as I say, one. This was Lauren's old. This is her first knife that she had, a little open all. Oh, it still works. It's just where the clamp had gone over, but she had the blunt nose open all there. And as I say, and people were asking us, you know, oh, where'd you get that? Where'd you get that? And it was just my idea then to start making them. So I did actually make these for a while. Anyway, that's what I was digressing ever so slightly. So that's, you know, if you want to do something a little bit more fancy with your stitching. Where's that other one quickly? Now, no, not that one, is it? No, where's the other one? I do apologise, folks. Right, I can use this as an example. Now, this is my mate Mick. I made him a little pouch some time ago, and the press stud needed replacing. But you see that thread there, that sort of thread design. So basically, you'd have 2 needles, and then you'd basically stitch them through the bottom one there. I've actually riveted that as well. Then you stitch it at the bottom there, and literally you just kind of cross them over into the next hole, and the next hole, and the next hole, and the next hole, and you kind of get that kind of design, and that's quite nice if you want it sort of on the outside. It looks a little bit more fancy. But obviously for this one, we're going to go for what do I call the stitch? I don't really know. I mean, normally I just use, like, because it was just, this was basically just knocked together so I could use it to make, you know, just a hole to accommodate a tin, really. So I literally used just a real simple design there. I riveted it at the top end, and then I literally have stitched it over there and then run it all the way down. And then when it came to the bottom, I've obviously just done sort of like a simple straight overhand stitch. You can sort of go over it again, you can sort of cross it over, it's totally up to you. You can go that way, but then obviously when it's finished, you know, I mean, it's nice to have something looking like a little bit nice, even if it is just holding a tin, and you want it sort of looking like that. But then what you would do is you would obviously, to make something like this, which we're going to do, you're going to stitch it from the inside, because when it's done, you're going to fold it back through to be able to accommodate whatever it is you're going to put in there. All right, and then the only other sort of, when I've just thought about it, when I obviously needed them, is I've got a ruler. This is just a metal ruler. It's nice for obviously using if you're going to use the rotary cutter. A pencil for marking, or you can use something like this. This is a white chalk board marker, and it just basically sort of draws it. You sort of paint it on. So for example, if we look here, if you use something like that, you can actually see it marked. Yeah, rather than a pencil. Pencil can sometimes be a little. You might not actually get the sort of the description on your actual piece of leather. If you're going to use a Sharpie, Sharpie's a little bit more aggressive. I might use the Sharpie just if I want to sort of work out where to punch holes and things like that, because then obviously when you punch into it, you're hopefully going to lose that colour. But you know, that again, that just depends on you really. But a lot of the time when I'm making stuff like this, I do normally, all right, there'll be a few sort of measurements. I don't go too mad because I'm not really making them much for other people, and secondly, you know, it's just it can be a little bit of trial and error as well. But what I do tend to do is I tend to make things just a little bit more oversized, so then if there are mistakes, I can then trim it back rather than going tight and then sort of trying to, you know, fit it all together and then it don't work like a jostled puzzle, for example. Right, so normally when it comes to measuring the leather and working out what it is you need, you know, how much amount of leather you need to actually make your bag for whatever. Now if you just want to make a bag and you know, in that sort of style, and you just want to use it to put, you know, carving bits in there or tinder or, you know, whatever, then obviously you haven't got to worry too much about sort of how big it's going to be and everything else. I actually think this is probably the hardest bit if you want to make something a little bit sort of, you know, that's crucial to what you actually want it to accommodate. Now I'm no expert on this. I'm sure there's something, you know, that you can sort of, you know, go into the physics of it and everything else, but normally what I do is I'll go and hunt around my shed and I go and find something that's kind of like that's bigger than the actual receptacle I'm going to use, because the reason being, with that, you obviously want a little bit more diameter, so you've got something to work on when you actually come to sewing and stuff like that. So that for me would be not too bad to use for the base. All right, and then what I would then do, if I just point the camera down, Now, for example, now I've got this can, and what I would do is I would just sit it down and literally just wrap it till the leather sort of when it comes end to end. Alright, I'll literally go over the top, okay, and then I'll guess, and I'll literally just guess. I don't know if there's, there's probably, people that are proper, like, shouting at me and going, no, you don't want to do it, well, whatever, but this is how I work with it, okay. And then what I'll do is I might potentially use that hem because it's going to be hidden. That's pre-stitched hem now. So then what I'll do is I might go sort of just over the top there. Get my, we're going to use this little pen now, and I'm going to mark it about there. Alright, and then I'll maybe put in another one, sort of just out there. Okay. Right, so where them 2 dots are, I'm going to get my pen now, and I'm just going to mark it the full length of my leather. Now, if you've got leather, if you've got stuff that it's a little bit of a premium and all the rest of it, and you're sort of working with not a lot of materials, then obviously you're going to have to be just a little bit more careful. But I'm being a tiny little bit blasé because I've got quite a lot of this stuff that was given to me, and I'm just going to now cut it, and just for the purpose of the video, and then we're going to carry on doing the project. Now, if I show you with the scissors are okay to use. The lighting is pretty poor actually. I should just put my light on. So that's not actually too bad. That's come out all right. I'm quite pleased with that. That's quite nice. But sometimes it can be, it can be a little bit jittery, if you like, if that's the right word to use. And then that's why it's useful to have a rotary cutter, because these are quite good, especially with a metal ruler, because you can literally just press this against the metal ruler and then just run it up. I mean, it'll work with a plastic ruler as well. Actually, I'll leave that out because we might need it again. The other thing is obviously just to, obviously I'm talking to you now and sort of losing where I am with it. So I can't remember which way I went with it. It was that way, wasn't it? Okay, so that's the kind of size we're going to go there. And then as you can see there, if I pinch it up, well, let's go inside out actually, just to make it a bit more, make sense of it. So if I pinch it up and then work out where my thread is going to go, you can see that there's quite a bit of, that there's a bit of space there. But what you'll find as well, obviously with leather, is if you stitch the seam too far down, that will take up a bit of space. Alright, so I'll look at this now, and I'll probably use the marking that's on the other side of the stitching. I'll use that as my my sort of guide, if you like. And then what I need to do then is work out sort of like the how long I want it. So, which is pretty sort of quite explanatory. What I will do is I'll cut that edge off there, because I don't really need that. So I'll use the rotary cutter now just to take that bit out. I have to be careful. This table's proper knackered. It's been out in the garden quite a while, so right. So you literally just. I'm going to put a bit of plywood on this table, but there you can see that's using the rotary cutter. Okay, it does quite a nice clean cut. So I need to work out my length now, how long I want it. So if I'm going to sort of have the paracord on it and everything else, I'll allow myself about 2 fingers from the top. All right, from there, and then at the base, I'll normally have it sort of probably about a finger distance away. Or what you can do, I can, if I want to be a bit lazy about it, so it's 2 fingers there, and then what I can do is obviously put the ruler so as you can see now, it's starting to, the leather's starting to get tidy. So obviously I'm just using scissors, folks, because this table is not very it's not very solid to take the to accommodate the rotary cutter, so I'm just going to cut off there. Right, I actually think I've gone a little bit, no, that's not too bad actually, so I'm not gone too bad there. Right, now I need to do the base, so that's a little bit of offcut of leather. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw around the circumference of this or diameter of this tub. Alright, so that's that. And then we need to cut around there as well. Now what I'll do as well, I normally go around the edge of where I'm cutting, on the outside edge, not on the inside, because obviously you're going to make it just a little bit more smaller then. I mean, it doesn't matter if it goes a little bit straggly, because that's going to be on the inside anyway. As I say, if you're making a gift for someone, then obviously you're going to really take your time. But just to get the foundation of and the workings of making just a simple sort of pouch that, you know, you're having to utilise a bit of sewing, and maybe for your first one, you ain't got to worry too much. So there we go. It went a little tiny bit off there, but I'm not fussed about that. All right. And then what I'm going to do now, I can obviously then use that to go around the base there. Right, I've just got to have a tea break. Oh, all this talking, all this hard work. So far then we've obviously worked out length, width, and the diameter. And then what we're going to do now, we're going to get our needle and our chosen method of thread. Now, as I say, I don't like to use normal thread. I like to use linen thread or something that's got a little bit more gauge in it, really. You can use normal thread, but I don't think it's strong enough. And I think there is a formula as well of how much thread you're supposed to have. But for me personally, I always go a little bit over the top. I'd sooner have one length of thread, and then, you know, whatever's at the end I'll have a chuck away or use for another project, or the one thing I don't want to do is start sewing back in, you know, making another length. So there I've just threaded the needle while I'm saying they're talking. And also when you get to like my age as well, then obviously, you know, trying to rethread a needle, it obviously makes it a little bit easier having something with a bit more gap there. Alright, then what I will do is I will tie a little knot in the end of the thread, because then this will let me know when I've got to the end. Just a little overhand knot in there. I'll run it short right down near the bottom. Okay, right, so now what I tend to do then is I can either, as I say, if you've got, you know, if you want to make yourself up a little plank of wood to put that on, or you can, as I say, if you're just doing something like this, you can get away with just, you know, you can get away with just using it as is. I've actually cut that a little bit off. So what I'm going to do is, while that's there like that, I'll come back to you a sec. Yeah, that's better. What happened was it was slightly off at the bottom, so with my little OCDs or something, even though I like to be a little bit blasé about it, I also like to be a little bit more, I like to be a bit good about it. So anyway, so what I do then, work out which end you want at the top. So I'm going to go for this end at the top, take all those other bits of thread. As I said, I was going to use the previous thread line there as my sort of gauge. I mean, there's actually holes in that already if I wanted to use them, but obviously you haven't got them on the other side. So then what I will do then, obviously, is then gauge you know, how many holes I need. Now I'm going to what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it a number of ways with putting the holes in, just to show you. So I'm going to go for the smallest diameter hole punch, which is that one there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a couple of holes in it. You can go all the way down, it totally depends on you. Let's take the catch off there. That's right, so we've worked it out. I'm going to use that end, and then I'm going to use, as I say, that is the little line on that side as my guide, and then I'm going to, near the top, punch a hole into it. Okay, so that's my first one. Alright, now you can do this all the way down. You can do this with a hole punch all the way down, or as I say, you might want to mark it on one side with a pen of choice, and then you can either stab it all the way through with an awl or use the hole punch. So I'll do a bit of both. I'll do like sort of maybe quarter with the punch, and then I'll use the awl for the rest of it. Right, and I'll also mark it as well. So I've got that one there. I'm now gonna back. Okay, so we've got through there, and then same again, through there, through there. Oh, that was slightly off, but it doesn't matter. The last one I've just put in, that's typical, isn't it? Okay, so you can do something like that. Okay, now it doesn't look posh and everything else, but when you actually turn that inside out, that's going to be on the inside and you're not really going to see it. Okay, so now with that in mind, we've used the hole punch. Now let's use the awl. So again, I'm going to mark it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's an example. Put the lid on. Put the lid on. And then we're now going to obviously be careful where your fingers are. And then we're just going to punch that through there. Alright, and as you can see that will make the, using an awl will obviously make the hole a lot tighter, a lot more effort to push it through. And obviously I've used a sail needle as opposed to the sort of excuse me, the diameter of a normal ball. Alright. What I could use, just had a brain fart. I don't even know if that one will work. That one's gone straight in my hand. That's sort of like a. Let's try that one, shall we? I mean, I'm going to carry on using that one. I'm just trying to show you a couple of examples, really, of different things you can use. So we're going to punch through there. Oh, that went through easier. That did. Because with an awl as well, some of the time they're round, whereas a sail needle is it's got that sort of odd shape to it, isn't it? Again, that's going through there. And I'll repeat the process. I'll come back in a minute. So we've got this far in the stitching now, down to the bottom. We've now got to put our base on. So again, that will go inside out. I'll run that through there. Pull the needle through. What I did do is I used the off screen. I used the hole punch just to get it done, and then the last hole I used an awl again. So you want to leave it about maybe a little finger from the bottom, and then this will go inside. What you can do is just open it up slightly so it gives you a little bit of a platform to work from, and then what I'll do is I'll literally put that in there and just work on the corner. Okay, so it looks like that. And then I'll stitch into that and then just carry it on all the way around. And you carry on, just carry on around, going around the edge of that round piece of leather, punching your holes into it. It might seem a bit weird doing it because you think, oh, that ain't gonna, that ain't gonna work, blah blah blah. And then what starts to happen, it starts to go round, starts to form on itself when you start going further and further around as you start sewing into it. So I'll just do a few now without me talking. Now a real quick one, you're punching the holes all the way round, and sometimes the needle will struggle a little bit to go through the hole. What you can do is, what I often do is use a little piece of leather, okay, just fold it in half, and then obviously that will just accommodate you, sort of like, you know, because that can be quite sort of, you know, uncomfortable on the tip of your fingers and all the rest of it. So just using a little bit of leather that just aids you in sort of pushing the needle through, like so. So I'll literally just place it on the end now, and then it just helps you push the needle through the hole. And as you can see, that it's starting to take form as it's going around the edge of the round piece of leather. Right, so we're almost at the end there now on this particular bit. So you see we've got that little bit of space there and the space the other side. What I'll do is I'll carry on stitching there, and then I'll carry on stitching across. I mean, I haven't actually got a lot of thread left. It's really surprising how much thread you use up. So I'm just going to carry on now and finishing this off. And then what I'll do then is, just to use up the thread, I'll just kind of run it up the side a little way, bring it back down, and pass that last one through there when you decide which one you're going to use. Take off your stitching, and once you've done that, you can now do the aggressive bit, folding it back on itself. And it looks quite untidy, but it's a bit like when you put wallpaper up and you've got like little dinks in your wall and stuff like that. When you actually pull this out now, actually that's not as good as I thought it was going to be. Maybe I think because I rushed it near the end, but hey, for a first one, just to put a tin can in, then you can punch your holes in the top, put your paracord into it, and job done. It's a bit untidy there at the end, but that's my fault. I could have made them holes a bit tighter, but yeah. That's probably not the best example of how tidy that should be, really. That's a little bit, that's not as tidy as I would like it to have been. Obviously you want it to be, you know, you want it to look a little bit like that as opposed to like that. But, you know, as I say, you can tell the difference in stitching, whereas that one I sort of just left it a bit wider as opposed to that one where it looks a bit thinner. But you kind of get the gist. Alright, this video is going to probably, I don't know how, I've done so much recording of it now, it's probably going to be quite a long video, really. But anyhow, well, I hope that one was all right for you folks. Hopefully get the point across, get your leather, get practicing, get your needles, your thread and everything else. And yeah, the next one, what I plan on doing is doing one of these, basically a cover for your spoon knife. So that's the next one. When I get it up, who knows? I'm not going to say it's going to be up next Wednesday, or this one will be up next Wednesday, but obviously the following Wednesday and all the rest of it, I'll get it recorded whenever, and obviously it'll come out on a Wednesday. All right. So thanks for watching. Hope you're liking them. Those people that are sort of enjoying them, they're not long, you know, they're not. They don't seem to get that amount of views, but who cares? There's obviously people out there that like them. All right. So thanks for watching, and put your comments and all that down below. All right, and I'll put some links down there as well for some of the threads and stuff like that if you want to get hold of some. All right, so take care. See you on the next video, folks.